drag it all up and send it down. So many questions. Yeah. And who's pulling the orange bags out of the recycling before they get to Western?
We'll do our best.
Western doing that?
I'm going to call this special meeting of the Solid Waste Advisory Commission to order. This is Friday, June 12th. It is 1:30, and we'll start off with roll call. Please indicate if you're present. Cheryl Caldwell, absent. Mark Nelson.
Mark will be here momentarily. He was right behind me. Oh, here he is. Walk him in the door.
Steve Corey, here. Carrie Glenn.
Here.
Dave Neal.
Here.
Megan Larson.
Here.
Andrea Pogue.
Here.
Scott Walters.
Here.
And Victoria Madrigal. Super. We'll move on to the ex officio members. Councilwoman Malam.
Here.
And Rochelle Klein.
Here.
Quorum being present, we'll go ahead and move on to the business. First off, an agenda has been sent out. Is there any comments or motions on the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda.
It's been moved and seconded that the agenda be approved as written. Any further comments? Sensing the commission's ready for a vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The motion passes. Thank you. First item of business is a presentation on Boise's Orange Bag Program. Catherine is not here. Is there someone?
Where do you want, I have a few slides.
Oh, we can try this.
If not, I can just talk about it, but
We can try this. Carrie, remember how we do this or Genesis?
Carrie did it last time.
Last we did it once successfully, but let's see. Oh, is that what? Oh, yeah. Here.
There we go.
Yeah,
Oh, there.
I think.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you.
You guys have already reviewed these, and they've already gone out, the new facts.
I can,
All right.
just talk if I need to.
Andrew, do you have an extra set of those?
They staple it. Oh, are you getting
No. We're just gonna hear from them and then,
because they were on the agenda.
oh, and I can speak to that. Yeah.
Oh, that's good, so you use that instead.
Yeah, watch how we do. You should watch.
Meridian SWAC. Haley, is it titled Meridian SWAC?
Yeah. It's creatively titled. Yeah, can I drive?
Yeah, hold on, just let me do something real quick here.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, thank you for having me today. Haley Faulkner, I'm the Environmental Division Manager for the City of Boise. Catherine is out sick today, so she wasn't able to make it. So appreciate your time and just, I have a couple of slides to give a little bit of background about where we are, but really look if there are questions or information that I can share. The reason I have this in case there's any notes or any questions that you have that I need to take back. So I don't think that this is of any surprise, but this is really the plastic issues that are driving everything, and the reasons that we're where we are with plastics recovery is the change in July from China, and specifically their notification of changes to plastics recycling, what will be accepted, and also standards set on mixed paper. And I guess I got confirmation today that this is up to 0.5%, but still really a very low amount of contamination allowable in the paper. So kind of two driving factors there with this implementation date of the first part of this year. So that's the driving factor. I don't think any of that is a surprise. A little bit of our timeline and kind of where we are with this grant. So we've really been talking about this Keep America Beautiful grant that has allowed us or is supporting this Orange Bag program for the plastics recovery. So the grant was identified in August, so shortly after the announcement, that July announcement, and this came to us through Happy Family Foods. They're the company, the local company that makes like squeeze pouch baby food and other kind of toddler and baby foods. And so they have been looking for a way to recover the material that they have. So they have a pouch that is not traditionally recyclable. And so this was separate from this plastics ban. It was really a focus for them on diverting those materials out of the landfill. They're a certified B Corp, and they wanted to see that happen, and they were wondering if we were interested in partnering. So we did submit that grant in September. We were notified at the end of October, so that was kind of the time frame that we've been following. In October, we were notified as finalists, and then we were notified in the middle part of December that we had received that grant. So, and then January 3rd was the press release for Keep America Beautiful. In that time frame, I guess for where we are in that October time frame is when we really got our hardest hit on the recycling program related to some of these changes, and it really ramped up from this Keep America Beautiful grant being something that we were focused on for diverting some of those harder to recycle or non-recyclable films and plastics in these pouches to something that could potentially be used for these other materials such as the 3 through 7 plastic. So a little bit of a shift halfway through there that it could be a program that we could use for other materials. But the initial start with Happy Family Brands was really a focus on some of those materials that are not currently accepted or at the time were not currently accepted in the recycling program. And so just a little bit about what that grant is. It's a 2-year grant. It's $50,000 over the course of those 2 years. In addition to that, some graphic support and outreach really as a part of their program to keep in line with what that recovery program is. They'll pay for the transportation to the company we were arranged with, Renewlogy, who takes those plastics and converts them to fuel. We are focusing on a residential program to start, and then have an obligation to consider what the implementation of a commercial program looks like moving forward. And for us, we are purchasing that first round of bags. We wanted to be as kind of robust in the initial implementation as we could and get that out to as many people and make it as easy for folks as we could to start with. And so we'll be purchasing and delivering that first round of bags. They're essentially orange garbage. I should have brought one. They're orange garbage bags. And we've asked for a unique size, so they're 13-gallon bags. The traditional sizes have been 8 gallons and 30 gallons, so this is a little bit in between. We'll have 26 per roll, so 1 per recycling day since we do every other week recycling. The planned start date is a little bit in flux, just depending on the delivery and production of those bags. And then what happens with those orange bags is they'll get filled at home. So we kind of have a pre-sort recycling and recovery happening at the in-home level. And then those bags will get tied and placed into the recycling cart at home. And then they'll be removed and baled at the recycling center and then sent, the bales themselves, the orange bags, sent to Renewlogy in Salt Lake City. A little bit on this company. I don't remember the exact nexus of who introduced whom to this company, if it came from Happy Family or from Dow through the grant, but they are a company that started in the Bay Area but really have been anchored in Salt Lake City for some time now through kind of an industrial startup with the University of Utah. They've gotten some funding through the state of Utah and the city of Salt Lake as part of their startup. So they're a plastics to fuel. You can see in the bottom picture there, they convert they kind of chop the plastics up, and then they go through a process and create essentially agricultural grade diesel fuel. And so we've been to the facility and seen it there. They also, in addition to producing the fuels there, they do produce the equipment and sell the equipment to other communities. They really ultimately don't want all of the plastics being shipped to their facility in Salt Lake. They would rather have this equipment out and decentralized and be able to do this recovery in other places. It's about a 98% recovery, so of the plastics that they receive, they're recovering about 98% of that into diesel fuel. And I think in the essence of time, and that I know there are likely questions, I think that's all I have for slides, and we'll be happy to entertain whatever questions there might be about the program that the city is implementing.
Thank you, Haley. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you as well.
I appreciate you coming here and giving us the opportunity to learn a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Members of the
Chair,
commission, yes.
Could we go back to the first slide and maybe just go slide by slide and ask if any commissioners have any questions related to that slide? So I appreciate that. We're back to slide 1, correct?
I think we're there, right?
Yep.
So just one question I'd ask, and I don't know if you know, but perhaps Rochelle Klein might. This says China notified World, what's that?
World Trade Organization.
Organization, July 2017. I heard that the industry generally was learning of the potentiality of these changes as early as May of 2017. Do you have any knowledge about that or not?
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, not to my knowledge and not in our group. This was really, I think that, and we'll let, I think Republic and Western could possibly respond in other realms. I've been in my role for about a year, so my solid waste experience is in that year. Okay. So there have been changes kind of ratcheting down over the last several years, and I think July, though, was the first on paper kind of documentation of what was to come.
Yeah, Chairman and Commissioner Pogue, I'd have to say the same. I don't know of, I think that China had instituted the green fence prior to this, before National Sword, and I think there were rumblings of changes coming, and I think, I would ask Western, do you know, Dave?
Well, there's been rumblings for a long time.
Yeah.
Good part of the year, but it's true, they came out with these standards about the middle of the year. And that 0.3%, they came out recently and said it was 1, but then today we heard they're back down to 0.5.
I saw the National Waste and Recycling Association published an article today that said they're at 0.5%.
So, Mr. Chair, could we just slow the conversation down? Because this is information that I know the mayor and council are going to want SWAC to report on. So, Mr. Dean, maybe you could come up to the, not right this minute, but we're going to follow along that train of thought regarding what the current standard is now that we've responded to, making, and its impact on the MRF, okay, and costs locally. But let's get down, we'll get to that in a bit. I guess I still have a question. Some of the expressed concerns by Meridian citizens is that, the potential for Meridian, local cities, the county, to have not been as proactive or productive in responding to these murmuring rumblings of this, impending change. I know SWAC picked up that ball and started running with it when it was brought to our attention in October. But I have a question, Rochelle, I think maybe you can clarify. So in July, there was notification of changes. My understanding is that certain standards were given out by China. We're going to implement this. That began this kind of negotiation, discussion. The standard bounced around. Everybody was beginning in the industry to sense this was not going to be good news for the plastic stream. But it wasn't until November, and I don't have the date, that actually the current standards were communicated officially that would go into effect by China as of January 1. So is that a correct summary, Rochelle, or do we need to clarify the record further?
So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner, I think we might have to clarify the record a little further. We did know that this, I think we had heard it was going to drop to 1% at that point in time. And what we did as the Ada County SWAC is we formed a subcommittee to look at what plastics would be acceptable. And I want to say we met like 3 times between October and December. I mean, it was pretty rapid fire, like trying to get a list of what would be acceptable so that we could start community outreach. So it wasn't just that contamination levels for paper were going to drop to this low level. It was really the ban on 3 through 7s and how we would respond as a collective to that. Like what we wanted to make sure what was collected in Meridian was collected in Star and Boise and Eagle and every place else. And so we did start a subcommittee, and we didn't finish that subcommittee until December.
So was it November when the current standard was? Because
Andrea?
I've heard there's like a 2-month.
Right. Let me repeat some stuff that was given out at the October 26th webinar by the EPA. And so if you would, back in February of 2017 was when China announced National Sword. That didn't really mean a bunch to any of us at that particular point. And then as specified here on this slide, in July of 2017, they filed written notice with the World Trade Organization that they were going to ban the import of mixed plastics and mixed paper. Again, but what does that mean, especially in light of the fact that we know that they need some of the portions of those 2 streams as feedstock? So it was in August of 2017 that new specifications started coming out. And then ongoing throughout the year, they were not doing renewals of licensing of facilities within China who could receive the material, giving us further indication that there was not likely to be anyone to receive the material if we wanted to put it out for market. And then traditionally, 2 months before they actually purchase a material, that is to say, for the material after the ban this month in January, the specification for that procurement is released, and that was released early in November, first couple of weeks. And that was when we started to get this, okay, it's got to be pure 1, pure 2, and that 0.3%, 0.5%, those contamination standards finally were made clear to us in November. And I guess as a sidelight to what Rochelle was saying, after our September quarterly meeting for Ada County SWAC, we met monthly on October 23rd, November 15th, and December 11th.
Mr. Chair, I know you're the chair of Ada SWAC, and so those special meetings in October, November, and December, were they focused strictly on response to this situation?
Correct.
Okay. And could I just ask if Boise has a representative on Ada SWAC?
Yes, they are, and Catherine Trudy was present. For
just background information. Okay.
Yes, Megan.
So this slide indicates a December 31st implementation date, so maybe it's Republic or Western. What is happening with plastics that are coming in the stream now from Boise and from other cities in the county?
So
when did they arrive?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Meg, we collect them on the trucks, and we still currently take them to Western Recycling, and then from there, Western can tell you where they go.
Mr. Dean, would you like to come forward? And not that we're done with Boise, I don't know how to handle this, Mr. Chair. Yeah.
And I'll just expand on my question a little bit. I'm a little bit confused. As like a citizen, I thought the time was now to no longer put plastics in my recycling container, so I've stopped doing that. But I imagine that adoption of the new guidelines has been mixed. So I'm wondering what's happening with stuff that's getting there.
Okay, there's other countries other than China that accept stuff such as India and Malaysia and Indonesia and Vietnam. We have shipped a few of those that way, but primarily right now we're sending them to either Seattle or Salt Lake, where they're going through an optical sorter. So the 1s and 2s are taken out. And so far, the 3 through 7s, everybody's just got them stacking up. Hundreds and hundreds of bales at a lot of these facilities that they're very difficult to move. I mean, to sell them, somebody might offer you $100. If you pay them $100 and deliver it to the dock, they'll maybe accept them or something, but not even that's been going on very much. So they are, they're all still going through a process. I can't tell you for sure that any of the 3 through 7s are going much of anywhere right now. I mean, there are markets. I don't know. I think, I know the 2 or 3 places that we've been dealing with, they just got them stacking around right now. They're not.
Thank you. So just to confirm that I understand, so the 3 through 7s are not stacking up here in Ada County, they're stacking up in Seattle or elsewhere?
Right.
Okay.
To further that question, and who's paying to do that shipping?
Well, the shipping, we're still paying, and it goes into the formula on what we're paying or charging on it. So it's like $30 a ton probably to get it to Seattle, and probably closer to 25 to 30. That's about the same. It's a little less in Salt Lake.
Okay,
And,
Mr. Dean, and I'm just trying to clarify that the net cost, because I presume there is one since there's no market, is being borne by Republic Services,
yes,
correct?
That's correct.
And I think the question is, for January at least, Meridian's change in program was made effective immediately January 1. I'm not sure, but Mr. Chair, you may be able to speak on behalf of Ada and the other cities that were part of the Ada SWAC meetings that decided this course of action was appropriate. Seems like, Meridian's stream is getting dealt with to help offset the cost, and yet Boise's stream is coming in commingled as usual. I'm just wondering, Mr. Dean, Republic Services, what's your thoughts on that? What's your expectation on that? It's going to last for a couple of months because Boise isn't going to start their Orange Bag program till the spring. What kind of dollars are we talking about here that you feel or might say you're going to be covering that Meridian is trying our best to help you with?
So, Mr. Chairman, Andrea, I guess, Commissioner Pogue, sorry. The market fluctuates, and so, yes, we will, we're working on pulling them out of Meridian stream. We will be subsidizing, there's a cost to plastics, and that bounces around. So I don't know exactly what the dollars will be. They're not good right now, but I don't have a dollar figure. The difference between what we do in Meridian and what we do in Boise is Boise is bearing the costs of their recycling right now, like pulling any contamination and 3 through 7 plastics out. So although those will still be in there as we're working now January, February, March, onward to pull them out of the overall stream, I think it's important to realize by April, when the Orange Bag program launches in Boise, the goal is just to have the 1s and 2s in the cart like we're doing everywhere else. So that's the goal. Once the energy program launches, all those unacceptable plastics should be in that Orange Bag, and just the 1 and 2s that we decided as SWAC were acceptable will be in the cart.
Mr. Chair, I have an additional question for Rochelle. So I understand the differences in our contracts, and I understand citizens may not understand that. And Meridian is very thankful that Republic Services bears 100% of the downside of our residential recycling program. However, Republic Services does track the net cost, right, per ton,
right,
that you are covering for Meridian. SWAC and City Council has asked for that information to be available. So I'm just wondering, has there been any do you have the ability to provide information to separate out Boise's? Like, yes, I understand Boise is going to pay for their, pursuant to their contract, but I want to know, I mean, is Republic Services capable of, instead of saying how, you know, we have gotten on our charts $29 a ton, you know, whatever, will you be able to say, you know, net cost $29 a ton, and then break it out any further to show Boise's impact of contaminated material versus the hopefully cleaner stream that's coming in that might have cost Republic Services less? I'm just curious if there's software that could do that or not, or is that just too
So Commissioner Pogue, I would have to say operationally, that would probably be difficult because we have certain bays that we empty all the material into. And it might be something we could work with Western on segregating just Boise stream. We have not historically done that. I mean, that's something we can work with them on. We have historically just brought all residential trucks in and they empty into a couple bays and then it's all pushed across the floor. You know, we're hoping to see improvements just by working, you know, Meridian has a pretty comprehensive plan on outreach and we have some things going on. So we hope to see a decrease definitely in contamination in the 3 through 7 plastics. I don't know if there's a way to do what you're asking. That's probably a Dave question. And I don't know if the impact over the next 3 months would be significant enough to, I mean, we're hoping to all be at the same place by April. I mean, which sounds far away, but we're hoping that by the time we get there, we'll be at 0% contamination. So I don't actually know. I think things at Western get tight and crazy when I'm there. I mean, it's stuff in the door all day long, wouldn't you say?
Well, yeah, and you gotta remember the 3 through 7s they're actually about 0.56% of the total tons that come in. But the ban on that also brought to light the fact that we've probably got a 12 to 14% garbage rate coming in, and 60% of that is plastic film. So this whole outreach is not only the 3 through 7s, but it's to get that film out of there because to get to the new standards or even hope to, we've got to get it cleaner on the front end. But, you know, I just have to give that some more thought. If there's a way to figure that out, there probably is a way. But I kind of assumed that everybody else is still going to have that in, and it'll hopefully slowly, it won't disappear overnight. We know that, the 3 through 7s. But, you know, I'll give that some thought, see if there's a way to figure out what kind of difference there might be. But you got to realize that 3 through 7 is a very, very small percentage, but it's the whole idea that there's really not a market for it, and then it also is, the film is also what contaminates the mixed paper.
paper, right?
So,
And I guess, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, to follow up on that, specifically focused on that contamination related to the films, the City of Boise's outreach will focus on that in the next few months. So it's not that we will be doing nothing as we build up for this. We wanted to focus on one change for our customers and not having 2 massive changes in a 3-month period. And so our communication right now will be these things that have never been allowed. We really need to keep those out, and that's getting that garbage rate and those films out now. And we've already been doing that, and we'll continue to ramp that up. And then getting to the point where we can then transition into the similar message to what the Ada County SWAC, and you know, we've all agreed to that. We were at the table for that. That what goes in the recycling cart, that message is the same. And then we have the energy bags for other plastics.
Thank you.
Now, if I may put a little finer point on this, if we had done what we had agreed to countywide, and we were down to milk jugs, pop bottles, fruit bottles, and jugs, that plastic stream, we might have been paid for it to be taken. Am I correct?
if you have a 1 and 2
Yeah.
mix only.
Yes.
And then if you go the next step, every piece of plastic has to be pulled by hand. There's no machines to do that. And it takes 120 grocery bags to make 1 pound. And we're getting 260 tons a month of film in. So there would be savings not only on the trash, but possibly the labor. But yeah, and then the value of what you have left would have a higher value.
And I'm trying to make the point that if we implemented what we had agreed to and we were able to have that clean of a stream,
Right.
then it would have a positive
It would,
value,
it would.
as opposed to what we've got now with all the contamination that you've expressed, which we have to pay people to take. So it's not just the difference from zero to what we pay, it's the difference from what we're paying to what we could have received if we had implemented the clean plastic stream.
There's eliminating the cost of pulling 60% of the garbage out too, so.
Members of the commission, further questions or comments on the material on this slide?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilman.
I don't know if you went over this or not, but what is the cost per household for the orange bag program?
So I don't have a total cost per household. We're expecting to expend in the maybe $600,000 to $700,000 range for our total initial year implementation. But countering that with what we don't know what the savings will be, expecting that, like Rochelle mentioned, we do expend a fair amount on our recycling program every month. And so if we can see the contamination rates drop, the value of the recycled materials go up, the overall cost to the program right now go down, that hopefully we balance out that implementation cost that we're seeing right now.
Mr. Chairman, if I can add to that, I think are you asking if there was a rate change to add this?
No, I'm trying to figure out what it would cost for Meridian to add this.
Oh. So
If we were to
So I
explore
think
doing
there are
this.
lots of, we've talked to the city of Boise about this. There are lots of right ways to implement a program like this. So whether it's orange bags that the city buys or orange bags that just residents wanting to participate buy, or whether it's drop sites where people drop the bags, there are lots of right ways. So the cost would probably depend on implementation strategy. Do you want to add to that? or-
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman, Councilmember, that's a great point. So we have elected to purchase the first year of bags for everyone, and we purchased enough bags for roughly one per recycling day. And that is it's a hefty commitment, and that, no pun intended. But the reason is to really try to encourage participation. We talked about a range of implementation options, from kind of an opt-in, that we would still pay for the bags, but people would have to call us or log in and sign up, and so we would really be limited to folks who were really actively interested. That was not as appealing from a leadership standpoint. It was really a focus on getting as many people as possible with the opportunity to make this dramatic change. We know that some of the other communities, it has been either started on a pilot scale or more of that voluntary. You can go in and order them and pay for them yourself. We've talked about things like a coupon, like we used to do for leaf, like we'd offer a coupon for leaf bags. This could be a similar thing, a coupon for the plastic bags. I don't know which communities are doing the kind of shelf sales or online sales, but there are other models in the Omaha area that are kind of different setup than what we're doing here.
It's a different slide, but since we're talking about the bags. So it sounds like the city is committed to buying what it thinks will be the first year of bags, one every other week for a household for a year. And then it sounds like the city has not decided.
Yeah,
How?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, we don't know yet. I think we need to see what this first few months plays out, we are not anticipating a rate increase associated with this, and we really need to see what that balance looks like, what the interest in the program is, and then what that next year looks like. Also, what other community interest looks like, and if these are stocked on, if this is a valley-wide program and these are stocked on grocery store shelves, that's a very different model than a bulk purchase of 70,000 households of bags being delivered. So I think that's kind of TBD once we get this initial program rolled out.
Mr. Chair, but locally, these bags are not available for retail. They are not, correct? How much do they cost? What's a packet of 26 worth?
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, the pricing that we received was based on this large bulk order and is confidential. And so it depends on what that looks like. I'm not sure what the retail price is for the bags.
Are these bags considered film?
Yes.
Are they they used in the process of renewology to become diesel fuel?
Mr. Chairman, yes. Commissioner, yes.
So, Mr. Chair, this commission is charged with, forwarding to council at some point, a report. So it's really important for all of us to be, trying to get our facts straight here, and we really appreciate Boise and Western being here and Republic Services as usual. The question I have is, based on our conversation so far, because we have received a lot of questions from our citizens, and one of those questions is, why didn't Meridian wait? If Republic Services is paying, for Meridian's stream, and there was the indication that Boise was going to pre-launch a program not ready to launch until the spring to overlap with the messaging everybody else is trying to get through to their citizens that effective immediately, we're changing our program. My question is, how did that not happen? That Meridian wasn't given the opportunity to evaluate, because you just mentioned you only wanted to give your Boise citizens one message. Well, that's what Ada Swack's group felt, and it was going to be effective immediately because that's when the standard change was effective immediately. But how did it happen that Meridian wasn't given that option to delay whatever message we would make, because we didn't even necessarily know about I know that orange bag program, I don't know when Ada Swack started hearing about it, or, if you were just given it, awarded it December 18th, I don't know how much sooner than that Republic Services knew about it, or anybody could have done anything about it. But certainly between December 18th and when Meridian embraced the message by Ada Swack's, direction, there could have been a time to change course and just say Meridian won't change anything until we have had a chance to evaluate this ARCH, because people are asking, why aren't we on board with this grant? Why aren't we, why didn't we? Are we going to, whatever. So obviously we could have been using these months to deal with all of this in a way that would have been maybe more organized, more our citizen oriented, because now some people don't even think our effective immediate applies to them because they've heard Boise's messaging. There's confusion. So I guess and I'm not sure, I'm asking this question because it's come from our citizens. I don't really know who here can speak to it, but I guess there is a need or curiosity for why Meridian wasn't given the opportunity to do nothing until the spring when at least Boise launches their program.
So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Pogue, I can probably answer that. A couple of things. Dave Fisher and I ran the numbers, and it would have been $1.13 per household per month extra to wait. I mean, that's what we're subsidizing right now, wasn't it, Dave? $1.13 per household per month in Meridian on this issue, and that would have been every month for 4 months. And so, we've based on the political climate of Meridian in our past, approaches, we could have come and asked for that, but it wasn't budgeted for anybody, and that's something that we didn't think you would be interested in. As far as the orange bag, we don't have access yet. This was a grant that was applied for by the city of Boise and Happy Family Foods, and we knew at SWAC, we knew all along, like they were applying for this grant. One of the reasons Boise was awarded the grant was because they're part of a larger urban area that potentially could have a huge regional impact with diverting these materials and using them for, energy. But the launch has to be successful in Boise first. So, I reached out to a man named John Piper, who is with Dow, and he, before this, actually like 2 days ago, gave us February 1st as a day he would love to meet with the city of Meridian. Other communities will have the option of opting in if the program is successful. The timeline is still if we're going to do orange energy bags outside of Boise, we still have to have the approval of Dow. And I don't know if there is grant funding available. That was one of the first questions I asked him. There's another grant cycle coming up. We would have to apply for funds and be in that grant funnel with everyone else to be evaluated. But the door wasn't open at the time. Like when Boise signed on to this, it was very municipal, like it was very city specific. So it was a City of Boise and Happy Family Foods. And I understand they approached you on the grant, and so their partnership was tied together as the two of them. So it wasn't a multi-city grant award or opportunity. So it wasn't something that in this immediate time frame would have been available to Meridian residents. Now that Boise has been awarded the grant, that affords everyone else the opportunity to look at it, and there is grant funding available. And if the SWAC today decides to go forward with further investigating this opportunity, then John Piper from Dow will be here to meet with you on February 1st. So he is somewhere on the East Coast, I think, or I don't know where he is, Toronto, Canada maybe, but he did commit to that. So he said he would be here to meet with you to answer additional questions and talk about costs and the grant itself and things like that. So even I wouldn't even project in this upcoming in 2018, maybe by late 2018, but we'll have to get information from him.
And maybe, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, to add on from Boise's perspective, by no means was this ever an exclusionary grant or opportunity. And to echo what Rochelle said, I think one of the biggest reasons we did receive this is because of the growth potential. If we were an isolated community without this regional potential impact, then I don't think that we would have had the same success. And I guess just a comment is that we're not out of the woods yet on this. I mean, we've still got a lot of this program implementation. We're right in the middle of it. We're really excited about it, but we've got a lot of work ahead of us to get this off the ground and implemented and communicated. And so we're right smack in the middle, and we want it to be successful, and we want it to be something that works for other folks.
And to add to what Haley is saying, it was sort of serendipitous that this grant came along when it did, because they were targeting, and as other communities have done, the soft filmy plastics, like the plastic films, the plastic bags, things, bread bags, dry cleaning sleeves, newspaper bags, things like soft plastics and these squishy Happy Family fruit pouches, I think, they're plastic. They were targeting those before the ban on 3 through 7 plastics really hit hard, and it was evident that this was going to go through. I mean, the timing there were rumblings about the 3 through 7s, but I think the timing was just that this grant came along, and in other markets it's been about the soft filmy plastics, and then it just happened that these 3 through 7s could fit into this program. So it was sort of lucky. I mean, that's the way I view it, is just kind of lucky that they could be added into this program. And around the country, I don't know if there are other energy bag programs that take the 3 through 7s. I think they mostly target the soft, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they historically have targeted just the films and the bags and the things like that. I don't know if that made much sense,
So,
Yeah,
Mr.
Dave,
Oh, go
let
ahead,
me
Dave.
have you go ahead and confirm something for me. At the Ada County SWAC meeting on December 11th, what I came away with is that Boise had received some orange bags, and that their staff was filling those orange bags, and that they would be going ahead and doing some trial runs, putting them in their bins to be delivered to Western to go ahead and see whether they could be delivered to the system.
That was my understanding, yes.
So we had, at the December 11th meeting, the members of Ada County SWAC knew that it was still a process that was being tested, and also the grant had not been approved at that point. That's your memory also?
I think it was announced that the grant was approved, but we knew that the implementation would be months out. It was my understanding, and it is, the implementation, the launch is months out, which that, and Mr. Chairman and Haley, I think the pain, and there has been pain, because there's confusion out there, all of the rest of the incorporated areas in Ada County, and I presume outside of Ada County, and unincorporated Ada County is they were all, everyone was told no 3 through 7s, and January 1st. And it would have been, seems to me it would have been better for everyone, and it would have worked all right for the city of Boise to have gone along with that and then announced that we are looking at a program that we may launch in the spring, at least the 3 through 7s. Everybody, you wouldn't have this mass confusion of people who live in Meridian, unincorporated Ada County say, well, wow, you know, I mean, we had to, we're supposed to stop putting the 3 through 7s in our recycling containers, but all of a sudden we see the residents of Boise aren't. Well, you know, clearly the 3 through 7s that are going in the recycling carts in the city of Boise, nothing's happening to them. They're being baled and sent to Seattle and stockpiled, you know, and so it's not like some magical thing was going to happen and they were going to be recycled. They're not. They're not being converted into anything. And I think it would have been better for all of us somehow had Boise have just gone along with the prohibition on the 3 through 7s and announced we are looking seriously at a program, and we will announce the launch of a program if we think it's going to be successful. It'll be this spring. And I think that would have eased the pain for all of the rest of us in that it would have been said, okay, you know, and it would have given all the rest of us an opportunity to maybe look at the program too. Right now, it is mass confusion out there. You know, there's nobody jumping out of buildings or anything like that. But anyway, it's been really tough, right? And I think probably for every city that agreed to with Western Recycling, and you know, Western Recycling did mention it would be good to ban 3 through 7s and Republic. It would have been good had everyone gone along with that. And then the city of Boise announced we are looking at a program that we may launch in the spring, and even said this is what we're looking at. It would have made it a lot easier for the rest of us. It's just a lot of internal pain that we're all dealing with. The people calling in saying something's not right. You know, why do I have to quit putting my certain plastics in the recycling container, and the citizens of Boise don't have to?
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I appreciate your position. There are a lot of reasons why the city has taken the route that we have. We, of course, still are in agreement with what stays in the cart and what the agreement with the Ada County SWAC. I don't think the purpose today is to go into the reasons why the last couple of weeks have unfolded the way that they have. And so certainly not our intention that the timing happened the way that it did. We really hoped that this first month for our rollout would have really been focused on the background of plastics and why plastics are such a challenge, and then really transition into our program. And so because of that confusion, it really was important for us to get out with our program, because we were also receiving calls on our end about what was happening and what was Boise's place in this, and what were we going to be doing, and what was our community doing. And so certainly it is a tremendously challenging message to communicate, and we really are committed to the message of what is in the cart, and we are committed to the Orange Bag program and hope that it's one that works out for others in the Valley.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I guess when you say committed to what goes in the container, we're committed to that. In your immediate release on January 4th, and that's on Boise's website, you talk about this program that's going to be launched later. And then it says, until then, residents should continue to recycle as usual, which means commingled plastics in the container. That's what you're committed to?
So
because that's a different message than everywhere else in Ada.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner. Okay. Yes, so our commitment is that by April, or when our launch date becomes final, that we will all be at that same message, and that we have this, we've spent a lot of time talking about what our residents may be able to absorb as number of changes, and we revisited it again at the end of December and agreed that it was really important that we were one change, and that one change would be when the orange bags were ready. And so at that time, and up until that time as we're communicating, that will be the change, is the same materials in the cart, and then our orange bags as the other kind of recovery option. Certainly until then, the city is contributing and paying for removing those 3 through 7s and whatever that looks like. If they're able to be recycled, then that's great, and if not, then we will bear that cost.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I have a question. On this particular PowerPoint, which is the timeline, August grant identified to Boise by Happy Valley Brands, would there have been any opportunity for that grant opportunity to have been shared with other local cities and the county?
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, you know, frankly, I wasn't involved in the details of the grant. It came to us from Happy Family Brands. I suppose that there was, but because of the rapid fire nature of this and just understanding what the rollout would look like for the city of our size, we went forward with it, and knowing that the complexity of the implementation with one city would be challenging, and keeping that door open moving forward.
Thank you.
Yes, Megan.
So, just to make sure I understand, the message to Boise residents in April is put your 1s and 2 plastics in the cart, put everything else in the orange bag. Is that correct?
Mr.
In the
Chair-
cart, yeah.
Yeah, generally,
Put the orange bag in the cart.
yes.
So, going the other way, will 1s and 2 plastics contaminate the orange bag, right? Can the facility in Utah process them?
No. So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, ones are definitely contamination. They're a different type of plastic. I'm going to get quickly out of bounds on my knowledge of plastics. There's
Sure.
embedded oxygen. It defeats the process. And so that's thing one. The other piece of that is that they're higher value by them being recycled into another product. And so both Dow and just in general, as an industry, we want those recovered separately. Similarly with the 2s. The 2s also have a higher value being recycled into another product. They don't have the same contamination issues in the orange bags, but that does make, it would be a lot nicer if everything could go in the orange bags and go, but that isn't the case. And so it actually, it complicates it even more with the messaging on what goes in the carts, because then there are some number 1 plastics that will not be able to go into the orange bags and will not be able to go into the carts, and thus will have to be disposed of in another way.
Like particularly lightweight water bottles, like Councilwoman Wylam said, like what? And lightweight water bottles work their way into mixed paper, and they're a huge problem for Western to pull out. Wouldn't you say that's one of the, along with plastic film, water bottles are really bad, the crinkly
Yeah,
ones.
contamination in the mixed paper is pretty much all either the really lightweight number 1s or film. And like I said, that's after we've already pulled 240 tons of film out on the front end, and that's still the thing that those grocery bags kind of float around, and they just, and the flat, real lightweight number 1s, they act like paper. Once they've been crushed in the truck and stuff, they act more like a piece of paper than they do, because the polishing screen needs a 3-dimensional container to get it pulled out, and they're not 3-dimensional anymore.
Like clamshells, like salad clamshells and berry clamshells, those are the ones that, in addition to the lightweight water bottles.
Mr. Chair, there was mention that Boise did a trial of orange bags. Mr. Dean, did any bags break open, fall apart, that would cause?
On the smaller bags, no, and there was a couple issue on, but that was great big bags. So we've talked about running another test. We can't get the orange bags, so we're gonna find 1 mil 13-gallon kitchen bags, and we're gonna do another test on those probably soon. And we're all gonna get together and kind of fill them with a mix of plastics at the plant. The first one, actually, a lot of the city people had their own bags filled, and I know our guy took a bunch of them out, and he had the cops called on him because people thought he was stealing stuff out of the recycling bins when he's throwing these bags in. So because we wanted to put them on a specific route, so we didn't have to watch all day waiting for so we knew when that truck came in, and we did both a side load and a rear load truck, because there's different compaction rates and stuff. So.
Did I understand correctly, you were saying that you had more problems than with like a 33-gallon bag or a 50-gallon bag versus if they're using the 13-gallon bags?
That's kind of what, this whole thing for us is going to be, nobody's quite had anything like this, because even in Omaha, in that program, they get, it was an opt-in. And when you opt in, you don't get near the participation, if they do go with an opt-out, this is going to be a lot bigger, a lot bigger deal to try to get it pulled out. But, yeah, you know, part of it is, you know, they got to tie the bags well, which you didn't have any problem with that. You can't overfill them either, you know, and that was probably some of our fault on some of those larger bags. But we're going to do it again on the correct size bags with the correct thickness of plastic, and we'll just paint them orange or put X's on them and put them in a couple routes, and we'll do the same thing again and see how those go.
Andrew?
Mr. Chair, do either of you know what it will cost to ship the orange bags to this Utah company? And I understand that Boise's has a grant that's going to go help towards that, or their enterprise fund is going to subsidize. But to others, do we have a figure or for that?
I think we're running loads down to Logan and Vans for $650 right now, so it'd probably be a little more than that. $700 a load for 20 tons. Probably
$700.
$35 a ton or so.
Okay.
I think I don't know, did they say anything about keeping them dry?
Yes, they want limited moisture.
Yeah, so you have to ship them in vans. If you try to ship them on flatbeds, you get to spray if it's raining or something, so it's more expensive to ship in vans by quite a bit.
So that's on top of the other processing costs?
Mm-hmm.
Andrea, we were scheduled from 1:30 to 2:30. Do we have flexibility?
We do.
Okay. And I guess, is there any objection by any of the commissioners that we continue on?
I will need to leave in a few minutes, but I'm okay for right now.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so kind of towards Commissioner Pogue, we do about 8 tons a month in recycling, and if 25% of that, of plastics, yeah, so if 25% of that is 3s through 7s?
No. I'm trying to think.
Let me, I had Conrad pull some numbers for me. It doesn't get us to the end point, but he was saying from January of 17 to December of 17, so for the year, what they delivered, what they got back reported from you was 71 tons of plastic. That's all plastic over the course of the year.
From Reading, you mean?
No. At Western, well, let's see here,
No, it's closer to 280 tons a month
280. And then,
For
for the whole valley,
For the year or the month?
per month.
per month?
180 tons of plastic per month.
Yes.
So,
I believe one of the endpoints of this, obviously, would be if we were looking at getting one of these units and then operating it in Ada County and stuff. And I think one of the things that we need to understand is 3 through 7s, plastic films, all the other stuff that can go into that unit. What is the volume rate of, or well, what mass rate of those sections of plastic to see whether it does pencil out to actually try to get a unit here in Ada County?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, okay, for 3 through 7s on a per month basis, you're looking at about 24 tons a month of 3 through 7s valley-wide. And then on the film, we did some random tests on the garbage to see what percentage is what. And the garbage was running about 71% film. That isn't all the garbage. If you've been to the MRF, there's a place where the fines come out. So when you count that in, it's probably about 60%. And garbage has been running about 400 tons a month, so 60% of that's 240 tons a month of film. Which,
40
like I
tons
say now, is just
a month of
taken by
film.
hand.
Well, if those numbers are right, then, 264, that unit being able to run 10 tons in a shift, then it does sound like it would be operating pretty much full-time if we got one, basically having about 20% downtime at the most for the month. But
Mr. Chair,
anyway.
okay, so I think we jumped ahead. If
We
we
did.
could go to the PowerPoint, to the Renewology. Okay, so with regard to this company, I think some commissioners have questions. I know there's questions within the city. In addition to this information, how long has this company been in business?
I don't know the exact number. I want to say 4 or 5 years.
I think 4 or 5 years.
Sorry if I. Let me turn this. Mr. Chair, I looked on their website and they've been, they were founded in 2011, so.
2011.
7 years. Sorry, let me not know what year it is.
Okay,
And Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, they operate under the name PK Clean, and Renewology is, this year they'll officially transfer their business to the name Renewology. So if searching for some background kind of official business documentation, PK Clean would be the company.
okay. My understanding, but I'd like confirmation, is that the unit that Mr. Chair was just referring to, that they run, has a capacity of 10 tons, and that they already, I don't know whether they're running one unit, but I heard somewhere that they already have 3 tons of stream coming in. Is that correct? Does anybody know?
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I want to be very careful speaking about a company that is not ours. So the unit they have there in Salt Lake is a 10-ton per day unit. So like for Boise's amount coming in of, I think it's approximately 8 tons per month. There's no question on capacity. I don't know their current consistent streams of material coming in, but certainly it did seem like there was capacity there. They were working when we were down there on constructing and then shipping a for sale unit that they were shipping to a Canadian company, and then also working on developing a kind of a secondary business site. So they would have one for the production of the fuel and one for the construction and production of the actual units that they sell to other places. So actually separating out those so that they can keep their production online.
Do they charge a tipping fee?
Not currently.
Okay. What happens to the fuel?
That is, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, that the fuel is theirs. They own that and sell that onto the commodity market, and it's theirs to do with.
Okay. And then with regard to the unit, do you know the unit cost? If, as Mr. Chair suggested, someone may want to bring a unit up.
I don't know the details of that.
Anyone here know the details of that?
You know,
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner
Yes.
Pogue, I've heard $4 million.
Thank you, Commissioner
What was
Neal.
mentioned at the SWAC, or 4.2 million.
Andrea, I've been told that too, but I'm trying to remember where, but I think all of your questions are germane, and we need to have all that information presented to us by someone who's a authority on those.
And Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Pogue, I did speak with Priyanka, who was one of the owners of the company, to verify that they would have capacity to take Meridian's plastics, and she said she'd be happy to confirm that. And Haley indicated she's got a lot of capacity to take more, and she made it really clear that, you know, she's 10 tons a day on one shift and she would double shift. I mean, she's very open to growing her business. So she expressed only interest in growing the number of 3 through 7 plastic tons or tons in the gate.
I'm having trouble with the math. So Dave said 240 tons per month of film and 24 tons per month of 3 through 7 plastic, so 200.
For the whole valley.
For the whole valley, right, but the
Yeah.
largest population center is Boise, and Boise's saying 8 tons a month.
And that is, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, that is just on the plastics side of things,
Right, but
not
those
on
were
the
your figures as
film.
well.
And
Talking about 3 through 7, which would be, they're, what, 7% of it, yeah, that's probably about right on those, because they're a pretty small component.
So Boise is not taking the film in the orange bags?
No, we will.
Okay, so
Wouldn't that
240 tons a
increase?
month of film.
Well, that's the entire valley's film, so I
Okay,
don't know.
but
that
Boise's
we
the
would
largest
be-
city, so,
We're about 40%, I think,
Okay,
of what comes
so-
into the MRF, so not
So-
the majority.
so if you exceed the 8 tons, are you capping? Are you gonna say,
No.
we can't take any more, or is
No.
Renewology
Renewology,
tapping.
yeah. No.
They've committed to taking whatever we send,
Yeah.
even if it's 100 tons.
I don't, we don't have
Just,
a max
like,
on that,
yeah.
but I think that to Rochelle's point, they're open to accepting continued streams of plastics.
And Dave, may I also clarify that the numbers you're talking about, you have some commercial customers that come in, so when you give your number for plastics, it's not just residential, it's also commercial?
Well, yeah, but commercial's not near as, there's commercial, most commercial bins are 95% cardboard.
Okay.
You know, there might be a little plastic, a few cans, but it's, their contribution to plastic would be pretty minimal in the whole picture, I'd say. I don't know what percentage, I really don't, but there's not near as much in the commercials typically as residential.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. And Haley, we were informed the city of Boise was performing due diligence on Renewology. Is that finished? Is that available?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, we did. It was more kind of just general conversations with them, sharing of their financial information just to see where they are, where they're headed, and then doing some checks with the state agency and the cities that they work with. And so I don't have a summary of that, but overall I can say that everything was very positive. They've received economic development grants from the state and the cities. They've paid those back. They've served as mentors to other communities. Those entities were really positive about the relationship that they had with the company. That that funding sort of anchors them in Salt Lake. So as far as them being a local or regional company, they're there. All of that was positive.
Haley, do you know if there was a request for a report from Dun & Bradstreet, or if there was any kind of a background check of the members of the company?
So, Mr. Chairman, our legal did do some things. I don't know about Dun & Bradstreet, but I know that our legal counsel did do some work. I'm just not sure. I don't have that in front of me. Now my Surface is dead. So everything that we did was positive.
Mr. Chairman. And please forgive me, Haley, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I've had nearly 40 years of experience in dealing with solid waste, hazardous waste, recycling, waste energy. So there are a few things that sometimes, first of all, I'd be the person that would jump the highest if this works 100 as advertised. That would be absolutely incredible. That would be kind of an answer to everyone's prayers, basically. But a couple of things. The only thing I'd like to mention is sometimes when things look almost too bright, they're not. And I did notice on their website, and it was the one thing that kind of took my breath away, that based on the amount of plastic, the input into their equipment and the output of diesel, for every 8 pounds of plastic they put in it, they get out 7 pounds of diesel. That's an incredible ratio. Mm-hmm. That's an absolutely incredible ratio of what's happening. I mean, if that's absolutely true, that would be, that's almost unbelievable. But if it's true, it's a great thing. It really is a great thing. But it would be far and above any kind of recovery, whether it's energy recovery or product recovery that I've ever seen. So, of course, the one nice bright part about what Renewology is talking about versus any of the other systems I've ever looked at is what you're putting in. Mm. It's consistent. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have consistent output. Most of those things, you have no idea what's going in. If it's an incinerator, from season to season, the BTU value of trash changes, so the output changes, and it isn't mathematical change. If the BTU value in waste going is 10% less, maybe the actual BTU value or the energy coming out is 50% less. But that's the one saving grace, is we know what's going into it, today, tomorrow, next year. And so your output is going to be consistent. If it's really that high, 7 pounds of diesel comes out for every 8 pounds of plastic that goes in. That's amazing, absolutely amazing, and I hope it's true.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I don't have a tangible way to confirm that. We've been down there, we've seen the facility, we've seen the plastic and the fuel, and those are the numbers. We've also heard from Priyanka, 1 ton of plastics produces 6 barrels of diesel. So, and that's predominantly what they produce. There's other types of fuel that they can produce. Pretty deliberately not waste to energy. It's not incineration. It is a fuel production process, a synthetic fuel, working on getting kind of renewable energy consideration or renewable fuel consideration for this as well, which is an important thing for their industry, but also in going through this recovery process.
Thank you.
Andrea.
Mr. Chair, I know one of our charges is to report back in detail about the Orange Bag program. And Haley, if you don't mind clarifying for us, I was going back through my notes, and you said Boise's anticipating a $100,000 expense for the first year rollout.
I think it will be more like in the $600,000 to $700,000 range.
Okay, so hold on a minute. $600,000 to $700,000 range. Okay, and of that, because if I were going to be sharing to our mayor and council, I'm sure they're going to ask, what's the cost of the program?
Right.
Okay, so can you, and so you got $25,000 worth of a grant. You're going to subsidize. Boise is going to subsidize the remainder. Is that just to launch the program, or is that also to pay your Boise share of the net cost of the recyclables?
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, that is to launch the program. The expectation is that we will see some relief on the recycling kind of cost side of things, so that by diverting this and having kind of a refresh on recycling and recovery, we'll have higher values, less trash costs on that side of things, and those numbers will come up or down, whichever direction, less negative, and that will help to offset this implementation cost. And then, as was mentioned earlier, looking forward, then what do we do in future years? How much do we contribute for continuing the program and purchasing the bags and other kind of ongoing education and outreach, and the kind of handling of the materials and the shipping of the materials, and how is that rolled into a new kind of program?
Okay, so Mr. Chair, I guess I'm just wanting to, because the $25,000, or what you got from Dow, it was described as kind of a program to you in a box. Like, they're including the marketing, supplies, whatnot. So can you clarify what your grant actually covers, or is it your choice how to apply the money?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, the $50,000 total is ours to go toward implementation. We have to use a small portion of it toward some community surveys to understand how the program is being implemented, but other than that, there's no requirements for how that is spent. And so, yes, they have provided some materials for outreach, but we have a community engagement program that is really, we're going to leverage what we learned on rolling out compost and really how we communicate with our citizens and use the materials that they've provided, but really build those to be City of Boise specific. And then there is an expense of getting information out into the community.
So do you have a ballpark out of the $600,000 to $700,000 for the year one rollout? Are you thinking 50% towards marketing costs, or what help us understand if we were to build this program? What costs go into that figure?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I don't know at this point. We frankly, because we're really just in the middle of this.
Okay.
We don't have that breakdown just yet on what the rollout is.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, to answer a citizen here in Meridian who may have gotten the misimpression that the Orange Bag program costs $25,000. that we could answer and say, no, that's an incorrect understanding. It is going to cost significantly more than that, and perhaps throw that figure out, or not, if you'd be uncomfortable about that, or just call Boise, for more information. I don't know. But I think there are citizens here who think it's not a big cost and that somebody else would be absorbing the cost, and so why aren't we launching this program?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, it all comes down to the cost of the bags, and I think that when John is here in a couple of weeks, that would likely be a conversation with him. And really, it depends on how the city of Meridian would want to roll out that program. If citizens are paying for those bags themselves and going to the grocery store or going online and buying them, that's a different sort of money out of pocket than if it were incorporated into the program another way. And that is what affects, we made one big bulk purchase of bags at one time for 75,000 households.
Okay, so a big chunk of the 600,000 is for the bags?
Yes.
Okay.
Along those same lines, Mr. Chair, if I may. So the bulk of the cost of the program is the bags, and then one of the other costs is shipping the plastic bags from Boise to Utah, right? And is that,
Right.
bears that cost?
So the grant for the first 2 years will cover the shipping and
Of
kind
8
of
tons a month.
picking up the bales from Western and getting the trucks to Renewology.
And if it's 12 tons a month instead of 8,
There's not been a conversation about the actual number. They just want those materials to get there. But if it's a 20 tons on a truck, it seems like that would be a kind of a monthly truck trip.
and then if the bag arrives, so, and then somebody's pulling the bags out of the stream.
Well, yeah, I was gonna speak to, like I say, this is kind of a new thing. There's not been anybody that's implemented one of these programs. And it depends whether they opt in or opt out, because there's a big difference in participation if you do it that way.
Right now, the first 2 years of the program is opt out, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So that's gonna probably have a lot more people doing it than if you did it the other way around. And so, yeah, be nice if you could pull them on the floor, but you got loaders and forklifts and trucks. You can't do it there. We tried a little bit, where the conveyor first goes up, and that doesn't work real great. So they're gonna have to go up on the pre-sort belt where we're pulling the other trash and we're pulling the cardboard off, and that's when those will have to be pulled out. Probably be thrown behind in big bins, and then when we get a few bins, we bale them. We'll have to store them indoors since they want them dry, and then we'll load them from that into a van.
One more process
Continue.
question, if I could. So it's possible that a citizen could make a mistake and put like a detergent bottle or something, #1 rigid plastic in the orange bag, contaminating it, and it gets to Utah. Somebody has to decontaminate that plastic before they put it in their $4 million machine. So who bears that cost?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, we would. So that's the one piece of our agreement with Renewology, is that we will pay for contamination, which is essentially whatever their disposal costs. So the onus is on us to educate our citizens, and part of that is we want this program to work as much as the next person, but it can only work with people's kind of engagement and following what are going to be complex rules.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, that's true
So,
for any
yeah.
recycling, but that just kind of adds to
Yep.
a cost, and we don't have a handle on what we think that's going to be.
No, right now it's about, that's the 2% kind of char is from contamination, or say if there's paper on a bottle or something that can't be converted. And so if that's been the kind of the one question mark that Priyanka gave to us, is what that conversion rate looks like really depends on the amount of contamination. And so we're hopeful that it will be low.
Based on their 3 tons that they're already processing, have they been able to give you any ballpark or anything like that? Because they're already doing this for other people, right, or other
A
communities?
ballpark on contamination?
And what the cost is to decontaminate?
Oh, it'll be landfill costs, so whatever the tipping fees are for landfills.
But no labor for the person to?
They're not. It's a pretty, not at this point, I guess. I don't want to speak out of turn. Not my process, but they're receiving materials directly from MRFs. So they're not coming from programs like this where citizens are the ones sorting the materials. So their contamination rates are lower in that sense because it's coming from a MRF. So there is a question mark associated with that, certainly. And we'll track that on a regular basis, just like we'll track what the process is to pull the bags and understand where there might be hangups and where we can help kind of alleviate some of those challenges.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, yours will be going through a MRF and getting down there. That's what Western is, right?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, but not the plastics themselves. So the plastics are going through the optical sorter at another MRF.
I see.
Ones and twos going this way, 3 through 7's going this way, and then these are going over there.
Okay.
We are asking our citizens to be the MRF at home, and they could get it wrong and put all of these over
Right.
here, and then we have contamination.
Gotcha.
Mr. Chairman.
I did have, Haley, in kind of applying for the grant and everything, was it considered, or was there any kind of community outreach asking at what point are the Boise residents going to be asked to stop being their own trash man? I mean, currently they have what, a trash bin, a recycle bin, a compost cart. Now we're gonna give them an orange bag. At what point do they get to say no more? Has that even been considered? Is there a stopping point?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, certainly, and if that's what we were hearing from our citizens, that would be a different story. We're hearing quite the opposite, which is it is not acceptable to be landfilling these, and we've got to find a different way. And we have a 97% participation rate in recycling and a 96% participation rate in composting, and really high volumes in those. And so in the other kind of survey data and outreach data, we know that this is something that our citizens expect kind of a better outcome, and that was what drove the decision to find a different way to do this. If we were receiving outcry over another means, certainly we've had questions. My kitchen is designed with one pull-out and a trash and a recycle, and what am I going to do with this orange bag? Right. And just we're changing the way that folks have to think. I will say, in doing the trial at home, I consider myself a pretty conscientious person. We produce a lot of plastic, and a lot of plastic that I just naturally throw in the trash. It's been eye-opening, and I think we have not done a communication and outreach effort on recycling since we rolled out our curbside recycling program. So it's a great opportunity for us to kind of reframe recycling and talk about kind of just products and where things come from. And we'll see, I guess, where it ends up and what folks, and the other thing is, yes, we're buying the bags, but we're not forcing. There's no rate or rebate or other kind of attachment to it, so folks don't have to participate. If there's not an interest in sorting, then the correct plastics can go in the recycle bin and everything else can go in the trash. And that'll be part of the message as well. We have a Public Works Commissioner who is not interested in looking at numbers and having to do that, and that's okay.
So Mr. Chair, so Haley, fair to say that fast forward 2 years from now, when the grant, can you reapply for the grant?
I'm not sure.
In 2-year intervals, or? We don't know. Okay, so that might be a question for us to remember to ask. But suffice it to say that there would be study surveys by Boise to your residents. You would at that point have figured out the rate impact, et cetera, and be open to gaining input, pro or con, before making this permanent? Is it fair to call this a trial program? And that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I don't think we're embarking on something so big and expecting it to be a trial. I think if we get 2 years down the road and there's a ton of contamination, we'll have our answer in that way. Or if folks aren't participating, that'll be we'll shift what the program looks like. But based on the outcomes that we've seen from composting as a very recent example, folks are very receptive to information and kind of the opportunity to do something and divert those materials. That was a tremendous behavior change and a shift and specific rules of what's in and what's out. And we have reason to expect kind of a similar response. But if we don't see that in 2 years and we do have this active survey kind of response, and we'll have data and interactions with Western and Republic, then we'll of course consider something different. We're not locked into this, and won't ever shift. It just, but we are going into it expecting it to be successful.
Mr. Chair?
Chair, I have a question. Sorry.
Let me start with the councilwoman.
So doing a little math over here, based on the numbers that Boise has, this program for their residents is under $1 per month per household. So, I mean, that's just, when you break it down like that, it doesn't seem like a lot of money. And if our residents want to opt into a program like that and pay $1 a month to be able to recycle 3s through 7s, I mean, I don't know, maybe there's some way that we can figure it out that way, but it sounds like it's a huge number, but when you break it down by the households and you break it down by the month, it's not a huge number.
Mark?
Well, on a similar comment, I was just,
Unless I did the bad math.
we're all trying to do public math, which never adds up, right? So, it just seems like in the total cost of resources and money and time and education that just maybe we're just fixating too much on the word. It's $25,000 grant in the big picture. Is that a showstopper for anybody? It just seems like we're just tied to this 25K number that is a small percentage of the big picture. It's confusing the public.
And Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Nelson, yes and no. So even if there's no grant, we still, if we're going to use in the city of Meridian or an unincorporated Ada County, use the orange energy bag, this bag that's on the screen, we have to go through Dow. So we can avoid Dow and their permission to opt in, but this is really specifically branded. This is a very well-controlled program. City of Boise's finding this out, like the branding and the communication pieces, it's very specific. And so even grant or no grant, the path to the orange bag would be through Dow and the guy, John Piper Cummings. So Renewalogy is separate. She's the end buyer, and she had said, okay, if they meaning like Ada County or the city of Meridian, doesn't get the grant and wants to do something, there's the potential for drop sites, and maybe we run a 3 through 7 plastics route on drop sites and take it to Western. They just bail the things and they don't run them across the line, and we send Renewalogy bailed 3 through 7 plastics. But the reason Boise opted for the orange bag program and putting them in the cart was for convenience for citizens, which is a high value for a lot of programs. People like things that are really convenient. So the only way, though, to go through get the orange bag program like Boise has is Dow is the gatekeeper. So you're right. The $25,000 might be negligible in the end, but would still have to work through Dow. Does that sound right? I mean, that was my impression.
Go ahead.
Andrea.
Dave, did you have something?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, and this is probably directed to Dave. As memory serves me by weight, total amount of plastic being placed in the recycling carts, it represents 8% of the total amount of waste being recycled.
Yes.
3 through 7s are 10% of that.
Or less, 7.
So we're talking about if 3 through 7s are removed from the carts, that you're removing 1% of what's being recycled now.
Yeah, it's less than 1%, yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah, it isn't a big weight thing at all. It's like, it's actually closer to half a percent. So
So if you're willing to, we're talking $1 a month per person, so opting in at $1 a month to remove 1% of the waste recycling stream. That was all. That was my point.
Wait,
Thank you.
Wait, could we slow down? Good conversation, approximately $1 a month per household to remove 0.5% to 1% of what?
Total amount of material being recycled.
Total amount or total amount of plastic?
No, total amount of material.
Of material.
Yeah,
recycled.
it's 10% of plastic represents 8% of the total amount of recyclables, and 3 through 7s represent 10% of that 8%.
Okay.
So it's less than 1% of the total amount of material being placed in the recycling carts would be diverted to, if everyone opted to do that and everyone was successful, to Renewalogy.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chairman, though, and Commissioner Neal, I have to say, as being intimately involved with this and throwing my 3 through 7 plastics away, there's something, though, that feels really bad about it. And so you might get people that will say, I agree, and the numbers are real, and that's a very, very tiny amendment to a really, well-established program. But I think you're going to find residents that will feel like that's a good investment to keep recycling those things. It feels, I don't know if any of you started throwing them away, but it feels bad. I have.
Megan.
Mr. Chair, I actually just want to add 2 comments if I could. First is on the $1 a month. Sir, 77 cents or whatever. Before we get attached to that figure and before it gets out there, I just want to throw caution in that we don't know the cost of contamination yet. We don't know the volume yet. This is, from what I understand, a first of its kind program where the citizen is the MRF. So I'd be really cautious about letting that figure get out there. I'm sure citizens, including myself, would be excited to participate and willing to pay for that, but I really don't want to get any more attached to $1 a month than I do to $50,000 grant, right? And then,
Agreed.
Just one
but go ahead.
thing, if I could, Andrea. The thing that gives me pause is the missing piece of reduce in the overall program. Yes. Like, if you're really concerned about plastic garbage, don't get single-serve water bottles. And with all due respect to Happy Family, don't get single-serve plastic pouch food items for your toddler. Like, and I think it's easy to go, the plastic problem is solved, you can recycle everything, and it completely misses the message of try to reduce your plastic consumption. And it's great to recycle, it's even better not to use them. And like, where is that message from SWAC? So I don't have an answer to that, but that's my comment.
I have a comment as well, and perhaps a question. What is 1% volume-wise? How much would it fill this room?
Are you asking compacted or uncompacted?
When it goes to the landfill, what's that 1% look like?
Well, I'm trying to think, we had an example where a baler down and created bales in our warehouse, but this was for all the 8% of the plastic, but we stacked it about, down 2 days, and it was about 12 feet deep and 40 feet wide, and probably 40 feet long, but the whole, all the plastic was, so you have to take 10% of that. Okay. But probably,
Wait,
that's in a month, though, you know.
that's a month. So wait, I kind of missed that. Dave, could you speak up? So just for the plastic,
Yeah, we did.
the 3 through
at that time,
7?
Well, just for the 3 through 7, I guess I couldn't give you an exact,
Okay.
but we did have a situation where we had to stack that plastic loose, all of it, in the program, and that's the whole program. And it, like I say, we stacked it about 12, 14 feet high, and it was probably 40 by 60 feet, and that was 2 days worth of all the plastic.
2 days or 1 month or
2 days.
2 days? Okay.
And so you'd have to take 8 or 10% of that to see what the 3 through 7s would be.
Yeah. I had a question for maybe Commissioner Neal. So this company, Renewalogy, is in Utah. Do you have any idea what their landfill tipping rate is compared to ours?
I don't remember. Well, I was there several years ago, and I'm sure it's changed. So I just have no idea.
Does anybody have that information?
Right in Salt Lake. Dave used to run a landfill in Utah.
About what ours is? Okay. I had something I wanted to add to Commissioner Larson's comments, but I think I lost it.
Other commissioners, comments, questions?
Well, I think I've learned a lot in all this discussion. So it sounds like the concern is that we have like two messages going out. Boise's got a plan of get it all, but we're gonna try to grab the 3 through 7s into a different mechanism. And in the meantime, just continue recycling your 3 through 7s. Whereas outside of Boise, we're trying to just remove the 3 through 7s. And the concern is that that's causing a lot of consternation. And so is the goal to try to hurry up and include it with
Let me,
somewhere, or is there
let me
a goal
try to frame this.
to improve the message coming outside of Boise?
The program will not be available before April 1st. That's a fair statement?
I don't know that that's a statement for me to respond to. It's not our program.
Well, no, I meant even for Boise. Boise's not planning to implement it before
Yeah,
April
I don't
1st.
think we can actually receive the bags before April 1st.
And so there would be one path for us to revoke our public outreach campaign at this point if we felt we needed to, understanding the costs. We've certainly taken our recommendations on that. But as far as deciding to participate, well, clearly, I think we need to have a conversation with John Piper about orange bags and if there's a possibility for people to be able to buy them directly, and in which case it could be a totally voluntary program and we really wouldn't have to do much at all. And that certainly is not going to happen this month. I think, may I frame it this way, that this is strictly an educational meeting and that we will continue to consider this subject?
Mr. Chairman, if I could
Does it
get,
impact our outgoing message that was planned?
so, Mr. Chairman, may I just make the recommendation that we stick to the outreach program as planned, 3 through 7s cannot go in the blue cart and the bottles. I mean, I think right now, since it's so preliminary, I mean, I would feel comfortable. We're working on some threads in every community to make sure people know what goes in the cart and what goes out of the cart. And maybe I can get confirmation if you're interested in meeting with John Piper. That could be a next step, and I could confirm a meeting on February 1st, and then you guys can meet with him.
Mr. Chair,
Andrew?
I'd like to weigh in. My understanding of why this meeting was convened is from the request from the mayor's office, and it is for the purpose of this commission to begin its process of assessment of the Orange Bag program to ultimately provide a recommendation for or against to City Council. I was under the understanding there's not a time frame for that, but that we would be working earnestly towards that goal. We have a meeting on January 24th. There's a town hall meeting in Meridian in the evening on January 24th to speak to our citizens and representatives of Republic Services on this topic to get further citizenry input and to give out further information. We don't have a meeting on February 1st, so either we need to decide today to extend an invitation to Mr. Piper for our January 24th meeting or for our February meeting, or vote to have another special meeting. It could go any of those ways. But that's my understanding of what this commission's purpose is for this meeting today. And Haley, we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for framing that.
And I do have one more question. So Dave, earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that 3 through 7s or the commingled plastic stream as it exists is getting baled and shipped primarily to Seattle, where it's just stacking up. Seattle and Salt Lake. And then from there, Dave, what's happening? Because there's, my understanding is no market. So is it getting landfilled over there?
Well, I don't, I can't say for sure. I mean, I know the last time we talked to the guy in Salt Lake, he was, he was just stacking it up out there. He said, we suggested that he maybe talk to this outfit even, but, I haven't followed up to see what, but I've heard from several others that they're just stacking it up at this point. And I don't know.
Can't go on forever. Okay, and so I have another question. Dave, there is currently a market for 1s and 2s.
Yes.
Correct. So the sooner,
Both domestically and internationally.
okay, so no market for plastic commingles, yes for 1s and 2s. And that is what Meridian, Ada County, and other cities beside Boise are shooting to get to effective immediately. As of January 1, we're headed in that direction. So non-participating cities of this effort are actually working against the city and county's opportunities, to have a viable, marketable products of 1 and 2. In other words, Meridian has our community recycling fund, and we care about that. And this lack of revenue coming back is concerning. And so I just want to see if you agree with that, and just to make note of it, not to indict, but just to make note of the impact to Meridian.
Okay, yeah, and I think that was the one I said I'd have to throw a number to. I guess probably what a lot of people don't realize, that the big negative impact right now on your pricing and your values of mixed paper. It costs us $10 a ton for somebody to ship. If we ship it to Tacoma, and they charge us $5 or $10 a ton to even take it, and so that's got $120 a ton it's costing to get rid of mixed paper if we can get orders. Some weeks we can't even get orders. So yes, this plastic, if you have the 1 and 2 versus the commingle, it will make, once you get it clean though, because that for a while it'll take people a while to get it clean, but there will be a difference, but it's a lot smaller percentage of the waste stream, and probably, I don't know if it would ever get quite, I guess I haven't, it's one of those things I have to do a little work on for you, because it's not gonna turn overnight. Yeah, it is, it seems counter to what everybody else says, and I agree with that, but, we figured it would be a process where we could start seeing, okay, where are we at on the weight of plastic, and where are we at on the other part of this is the film, because that's really, really important to get that out. And we're just hoping the message does those two things, and then yes, we'll eventually should end up with even if it ends up with instead of an 8 or 10% mix of 3 through 7, it's only got a half or 1. It's still going to have to be sorted. It's got more value with less of that in there. So I'd have to work on it to see what kind of numbers.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Chair, with regard to the mixed paper that is being threatened by the film, do you have information, Dave, Boise, Republic Services? Is China imminent? Is it imminent that they're going to change their standards with regard to mixed paper? Do we need to, do you know that?
Well, it's, we talked to the company that sources a couple of the big mills that are in California, the Chinese mills. And today they said they got the word, it's 0.5%. Well, if you got 12 or 14% garbage coming in the front, and you'll never get it to, we have, 4 or 5, or, we might be able to get it down to that. And so, but even if you could ship to China now, it's only like $20 or $30 a ton difference, so it'd still be a big negative number, not as big. But, yeah, with us lately, it's just been whether we can get an order, And then, of course, around the holidays, you couldn't find a truck to haul it anyway, so, but it's, we had about 850 tons sitting around the parking lot. And we are starting to chip away at that. And But yeah, that's 50% of the waste stream.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, one of the recommendations I'd like to make is that let's all learn from the plastics. And I'd like to recommend that you bring back, Mr. Chair, to the Ada SWAC, to the members of Ada SWAC, that we would work concertedly with regard to mixed waste paper. And if any city, any Republic Service, Western Recycling hears of any opportunities, grants to address what may be impending trouble to our mixed paper stream, that it would be shared. That's will be one of my recommendations.
And I don't believe that needs to be a motion or anything. I will take
No.
that as a request and certainly make sure that communication comes back. Members of the commission, we've really taken up the time of our guests here, and I want to thank you, understanding the pain that we're expressing. But members of the commission, if you have any further questions of our presenters, if not, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Haley.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, just,
Dave.
sorry, it's Rochelle, just so I'm clear, John Piper can be he lives far away. He can be in the state February 1st. Do you want me to confirm that with him? Or I know that it didn't line up with either our February SWAC meeting or the January date for the town hall meeting. But I just need some direction if you want me to confirm that appointment with him or if you want me to not, I guess.
Could he be available by phone? Or, well, I guess February 1st is a Thursday. It would require a special meeting. So to accommodate his schedule, I think it would be worthwhile to speak to him. So I appreciate Rochelle trying to accomplish this. What's the thoughts of the body? People, do we have a quorum for February 1st? And depending on what time?
I think he actually sent me the time. I'll check 1 second. Sorry, I put my phone away. Let's see. Sorry, I should have had that. I should have looked at his invite before coming. Okay, let's see. He said, can you read what time that is? Sorry, I gotta get my glasses.
8:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
So early,
Mountain time.
Mountain Time. I assume it converts. So he's from Toronto. So I believe it will be 8:30, or he 9 to 10:30, I think is what it says.
Wait.
He had two appointment times,
The other one is 9 to 10:30.
9 to 10:30 on February 1st, if that will work. And I assume that's Mountain Time because I think Outlook converts it to local time, I think.
And just quickly, he's with Dow. and
He is with
he's-
Dow, the Energy Bag Program.
Energy Bag Program, okay. Members of the commission, comments on that proposed time? Dave?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I've been speaking a lot today. Possibly, we should request at the same time, if there's going to be a SWAC meeting, to have the Renewology person to try to come too. There are a lot of questions for Renewology that would, potentially, if we could get that person here at the same time and cover both bases.
I can, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner Neal, I can certainly ask her. It might be likely that she'll call in. I don't know if she'll make the trip up here, but we can certainly call and ask her to be available during that time, whether that's in person or on the phone.
Because
I-
my
okay.
understanding was that she was going to try and get on the phone today.
Yeah, and she did say she would be willing to be on the phone today, but I felt like we needed to ask more energy bags. So she is an end user, so that Dow energy bag program, some of those bags go to incinerators, this is the first one going to a synthetic diesel manufacturer. So those energy bags go to different end facilities around the country. So I felt like we needed to get our arms, rather than have her stay on the phone for a couple hours with just a few questions for her, I thought we would get our questions together and then have very specific questions for her.
Okay, Rochelle, thank you, Mr. Chair. But I agree with Commissioner Larson, however, that learning from them regarding what rate of contamination they are experiencing is significant to our assessment of the viability of that program. You know, what does it cost? I mean, when we went out to the compost farm, right, tons of contamination coming in on that yard compost program in Boise. So she's been in business a couple of years. I think she probably has very good information. I would hope so. And I think Meridian would want to know the details of that, so, and partly figuring out the cost of the overall program.
Mr. Chair, if I could just amend too, but what she's experiencing now and what she will experience are going to be two different things, presumably, because this is the first time that she's going to have citizens as MRFs, right? She's taking stuff that's
true. That's a good
so I would
point.
Be
it would
more
be
interested in talking to her in, say, July and see.
Right. I agree. I think right now her level of contamination is fairly low. I mean, she told us it was very low right now. So I think that to Meg's point, I think down like July might be a better time to check in with her. I mean, I think she'd be available to answer questions now. She said, you know, if we wanted to, we could call her on her cell today. I mean, if she said, if there's a point in the meeting where you want, here's my cell phone number. And so I have that, you know, I think that it would have been a longer meeting if we called her and asked questions, but certainly we can call her, you know, when we meet with John Piper, if that's the way we go, or maybe January 24th, we want to call her and ask her questions then. So she's available. She's fantastic.
so more general questions. Okay. I'd be in favor of that. I'm available on February 1st, just from my perspective, anytime that morning. So we have to make sure we'd have a quorum to launch this planning.
Mr. Chair, I'd be available on February 1st, too.
I'm available in the morning on the 1st.
I need one more. And Dave, you said you were. Okay, so we would have so Rochelle, then I think.
I'd be available.
I don't think we need to make a motion, Mr. Chair, but it's up, you're to direct Rochelle.
I work under your direction on what we need to do. So if you think we're okay calling a February 1st meeting, then we're good with that. We have our meeting on the 24th of January, and then also there will be the one on the 1st of.
So specifically the charge of the commission to Rochelle for the February 1st meeting, because it sounds like that will be the agenda for that day, is to have Mr. Piper, I understand, available here. I'll try and get chamber scheduled, and Renology, if possible, by phone.
Mr. Chair, I know that's maybe mixing things, but I would almost recommend talking to Renology on the 24th if it fits into our agenda. So you've already got that done, and if people have a tight schedule and need to get out of here on that special meeting, it won't be such a long meeting, is that thought?
That's a good idea, Rochelle. So put it out to her. Is that okay, Mr. Chair? Put it out to her and see if Renology could be here.
So I am working in Seattle that day, but Dave, can you be available? Dave will be here, so January 24th in the morning.
No, January 24th.
Oh, the afternoon one. So you're doing a town hall meeting that night, but it'd be before that in the afternoon. Okay. Dave's in. I'll send him an invite.
So my understanding is Republic Services will arrange for her.
For her. And I will.
I'm not sure what the phone number is for this.
I was going to say, I'll just need a phone number for
I'll
her to call in. If
that.
someone can shoot that to me, I'll make sure she calls in.
I'll make sure I coordinate that with
Okay.
you. And then for the 1st, it'll be Mr. Piper agenda, okay?
We can just, do you want to meet back here on February 1st, or do you want to look at the availability of this room first? Okay.
I have to look
And
at
just
the-
let me know, and then I'll make sure I coordinate that with John Piper.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Members of the commission, is there any further business that we need to address today at this time, or can we go ahead and,
I guess,
Andrea?
Mr. Chair, I have a question just for the commissions to get a sense. We're now talking about having an additional meeting for this body, and in addition to our January 24th meeting on this topic, we're charged with a recommendation. Boise's not even launching this program until April. I mean, Mr. Piper can tell us in February, I guess, when the next grant might come open, but as we're learning today, the grant is like this very small amount of the total cost of this program. So can I get a sense from the commission, what kind of, so I could report back, what kind of time frame are we thinking it might take to make a recommendation with regard to the Orange Bag program for possibility for Meridian?
Mr. Chair, I know personally, like, I wouldn't hop into something if it's just, even for them, it's still a trial run. So I feel like we should wait a bit and like observe how it works out there. And almost, you don't want to do something if you haven't seen what it results in. And even for them, it's a trial. And I think we should just wait and see if it works well for them. And if it works well for them, then we should try implementing it. But I wouldn't want for us to try and for it to flop and fail for them and then flop and fail for us. Yeah. It's just a waste of money all around.
My sense too, but I don't know if we can do, extend our research and recommendation out that far, or whether there would be a follow-up recommendation. Maybe the first would be something like, here's all the information we've amassed for and against, and we suggest, looking at Boise's program 6 months in or something. So I'm just wrestling with this. We're putting in effort to, as this commission is known for, to do its due diligence. What are other thoughts as to time frame?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I also have hesitation without seeing how Boise's program plays out, because from what I heard today, it's a first of its kind for this kind of opt-out. Citizen sorts the plastics himself. But it was mentioned that other cities are doing this. If there is a way for us to find out what their experience has been and how they've implemented it, that might help speed the decision along. But if we're basing just on what's happening here in the Valley, I'd be really reluctant without seeing what happens in Boise. But maybe there's other cities that we could look at or get information on. Who I don't know, but
no, Omaha has a program.
Yeah.
Omaha has a program, an energy bag program. It has a different end use, and I think it's an incinerator, isn't it? It's a different end use, but we can look at, and John Piper can answer questions too, as far as how they rolled it out, how people get the bags, how, I haven't asked any questions. We'll haul the orange bags if they're in the carts, and we won't haul them if they're not in the carts. So really, it's really up to you guys. I mean, we're here to support you in that decision, but it's, I would ask him that, or you can call the city of Omaha and ask them. I can tell you that we ran a pilot of this energy bag program pilot. Republic Services did 5 years ago in Citrus Heights, California, and the end was, again, it was an energy waste to energy facility. It was a purple bag back then, which they changed to orange bag because the purple bags were hard to pull out of the recycling stream. They were harder to see, so that's part of the reason that we see orange today. It turned out it was run on a pilot basis for a little over 18 months, so a little over a year. They decided not to move forward with that program because transportation costs in California were really high to get it to the end facility, and they pulled it. And when I was just doing some due diligence and talking to the operations manager in Citrus Heights, he said still to this day, they didn't have a lot. They had about 40% of the people opted in occasionally, like it wasn't all the time. They were really compliant. And when the program went away, they still get requests for the purple bags. So there was a lot of interest and people were compliant. But to Haley's point, you might roll out 72,000 sets of orange bags, and maybe 50,000 people choose to use them regularly. And maybe everybody does, but those that are really passionate about it will probably opt in. And so at least that was the feedback I got from our purple energy bag program from 5 years ago, was that people were compliant once they got the rules. And for people who thought it was too complicated, they just threw stuff away.
Mr. Chair?
That we need to give Western Recycling some time to even work out some logistics.
I agree. I think they're really working hard.
How they could process that, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. I don't look at Boise's, yes, it's somewhat of a pilot program, but it has been done in other places. And I don't know that your recommendation would be to do it the way that Boise's doing it anyway, as far as an opt-out. And I think that if we were to do an opt-in even sooner, I think that contamination would be low. I think, you know, the people that are choosing to do it will do a good job at it. And so I don't think that there would be any problem, and I wouldn't have any hesitation starting this program next week if we had all of our ducks in a row and did it as an opt-in program. Not that that's the best end use. I would like to see more participation and maybe find a way to incentivize once the program's going, and then maybe change it up or to get more participation. But if it doesn't cost more really, because they're picking, you know, it doesn't cost, they're already picking it up the trash and the recycling, I don't see why we wouldn't do it. I cringe every time I throw something in the garbage, and I would gladly pay $1 a month or 75 cents or whatever it is, or, you know, so even if we did an opt-in with a charge, I think we would have some participation, and that could be our trial and then go from there. That's just one other thought.
And that's, Mr. Chair, a great thought, because that's where I was just kind of thinking. So, Rochelle, could Republic Services offer it as they did the grass recycling project subscription program?
So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Pogue, I just heard from my right over here that the bags, the Orange Energy bags, retail for about 50 cents a bag. So if, and to answer your question, so we're not in the retail business, so Republic Services would not stock, we wouldn't want to stock them or anything like that. So if customers wanted to opt in, we would definitely make the city, like working with Casey Emery and this SWAC, would define what that program looked like for the city of Meridian, and then we could help with the outreach of that. So any, like John Piper will tell you, which is what he told me, you know, maybe Meridian says only 3 through 7 rigid plastics in the orange bag, and that's okay. Like, you can have a program that looks different than Boise's. If you go through the process and opt into the energy bag program and everything comes together and the city of Meridian's approved, you meaning SWAC could decide, okay, it's only going to be this group of plastics, 3 through 7 only. And then we would have the obligation, as we do with all outreach in Meridian, to share that with residents, and then they would be in charge of ordering their own bags. Like Dave and I have been really clear, like, we're so worried, we don't want to be in the retail business and stocking bags and selling bags or anything like that, but we would make sure that we, you know, if people opted in, they could call our office and let us know, and we could send them materials, but there would be an opt-in if that's the way the city of Meridian chose to go process.
But what we've learned is that it's the cost of the bags, and so we're saying in an opt-in, they'd have to pay for that.
Yes.
But there's the shipping cost by van to get the material down to Utah. They need to pay that. That to me is a subscription rate, not for all the Meridian.
So,
we're not going to make it mandatory, so there's that issue. And then there is when Republic Services gets billed, or Western Recycling gets billed for contamination, Meridian residents who are opting out shouldn't have to bear the cost of that. So that should be embedded in the subscription rate that people opt in and are willing to pay in addition to the cost of the bag, right? I mean, that's a program that we could maybe build, like Milam said, more quickly, but there are these costs that we're trying to get our hands wrapped around, and I wouldn't want to recommend an opt-in program that somehow has Republic Services coming back asking for, you know, a citywide rate increase to cover the cost, because now we've learned there is contamination, even though they're motivated people, but it's hard to read the bottom numbers sometimes on those bottles, as well as who's absorbing the shipping costs.
Another, yes, to your point, then we could, you know, it would be easy for us to track those costs, right? So if we ship Renewalogy 3 through 7s, and we get the information back that now she's got this big disposal bill and the participants need to share that, then that would be a pretty easy number for us to calculate, and it would be, we could recover that, just like we do with grass recycling, which is an opt-in. We could recover that. We don't know what those costs were or are at this point. I think you're right. So for us, it would be really on the disposal piece, and on the shipping, I don't know how different it would be. Right now, those are being shipped, with the other plastics to Seattle. So obviously, we would be sending fewer loads to Seattle, and we'd be splitting those plastics, and some would go to Salt Lake and some would go to Seattle. I don't know what that delta in shipping would be, really. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be really big or if it's going to be not so significant because we're not shipping as many tons to Seattle.
So that's what we'll be looking at over the next few meetings, because it's just like, I think Commissioner Larson, you were wise to say, this dollar figure, don't let it jump out there and become gospel. I think the same thing. It's not just the cost of the bag, and that Public Services will pick it up anyway. It's not as simple as that. And so that's what our task is, to try and figure out. But to try and come up with a recommendation, if possible, that might allow for that.
Which might just even include buy your own bags and put them in your recycling bin, and here's what you could put in it. And then, not
To
related.
their point, they're saying that if there's additional shipping or if there's additional disposal, then the overall population shouldn't, if the council decides to go for an opt-in, and then the people who opt in should bear the cost of disposal and any other incidental costs. And so to Commissioner Pogue's point, she said we shouldn't come back and ask for a rate increase, which includes those costs.
It should be run as a subscription-only pilot program, just like the grass recycling program.
Right, but they're really, it seems like realistically there shouldn't be a huge difference. They're shipping it somewhere right now. They're shipping it. It's cheaper to ship to Utah than to Seattle. Dave just said that. It's $30 a ton.
There's the likely
$35.
contamination, because this program, citizens are the MRF. The material going now to Renewalogy is going through optic sorters, and we don't have that at Western. So and she said, and then Hillary said, isn't it Hillary? Haley said that Boise will get billed for that contamination, the tipping fee for Renewalogy to send it to their landfill. So that's a cost that would get billed back, and my question is, to whom? And I think council would want to know that, and I think it should go to the people who want to opt into the program. And your point was, if they're motivated people, there might be less contamination.
If they're buying their own bags, if they're going to go spend
and
$20 for 10 bags, they're probably going to pay attention to what can actually go in there.
But it's confusing. It is sometimes, whether it's, a 2 or a 3.
But we wouldn't know that until we did it for a while.
Right.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, it is confusing, and the plastic film problem, if you say the 3 through 7, that doesn't solve the film problem, which still has to be addressed. And it'd be great if we could put those information pieces all together and try to make it as simple as we possibly can. And it's still confusing. Like, I have a plastic chocolate milk bottle that my son likes that's coated in plastic film. Do I take and it's a number 1, and do I have to take the plastic film off before I throw it in because I have it?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, you're okay with that. That type of film is okay, actually.
Yeah, so it is complicated, and I think it's nice. I think people that buy their own bags and opting in, they're going to do a better job than people just throwing glass and plastic bags and everything else in the recycling can, for sure, because there's no cost to them to do it, right? So, of course, their compliance is going to be less, but I think it's naive to assume that it's going to be no problem and there's going to be no contamination. Even paper labels, Haley said, on the bottles have to be scraped off before they go through this machine. So somebody's paying that cost.
Right.
I don't think they
said the paper labels had to.
I think that Dave Dean was, referring to another process. But down at Renewalogy, that's okay. That what the plastic labels and paper labels are okay. Like just the 3 through 7s, whatever kind of. But you're right. It just needs some communication around it.
From scratch or guess. We can look at Omaha. We can look at other cities that are doing this. What are the things that? And with all due respect to Dow Chemical, I want to get another stream of information because they have monetary incentive for us to buy these orange bags from them because they're the only provider. So I'd love to hear from somebody else who doesn't make a profit off of the program, right?
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Larson, I have a recommendation and a suggestion. We have a Public Works staff member, Jason Korn, who's here and has been sitting through this whole meeting, environmental programs coordinator. And Jason, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium, what has been offered from Public Works is that if there's any way that Jason can be of assistance to the commission, that he stands ready to do that. And I'm wondering, Jason, if it would be possible for you to do this inquiry to Omaha to see about their energy bag program and how it's working.
Sure, Chairman, Commissioners. I'd be happy to offer our assistance and my assistance in my position to do any of these research type things as a Public Works City of Meridian staff member. I do have the resources to do some of this research. I'd be happy to come back and report to you on what I find out. So,
Jason,
yeah, if that's what you'd want me to do, absolutely, I'd be willing.
So I'm opening that up to the commission. Thank you, Jason, for expressing willingness to do it. Hold on. Okay. In terms of your workload, we have these compressed meetings because we have this 24th town hall meeting. So we have our meeting on the 24th. We'll be speaking, the mayor and council and this commission body, hopefully, and Public Services will be speaking at the town hall meeting in the evening on the 24th on this topic. I'm wondering, do you think you could do that research and get it back to, could I put you on the agenda for the 24th to report back as best you can?
Sure, yes.
Is that the direction of the body? So directed. Thank you, Jason.
All right, thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay. We appear to have chased everybody but these two fabulous folks here. Are you here to listen? Would you like to come up and comment?
Just listen.
Okay.
Which, and I'm not sure if you know, and I'm missing names, but so she's actually representing the county in coming to these meetings and knowing what we're doing so that there's a two-way communication path. Okay. And
Kurt Hunt, I'm the solid waste manager in the landfill.
yeah, okay.
Good.
So.
Just in closing, Haley was just saying she's available to answer questions. She said, I feel like if there are more that might come from this, she said she's absolutely available by phone or email or whatever to answer additional questions. And they haven't scoped in exactly what their outreach is going to look like, but that and then the due diligence, she just said she'd share both those once those pieces are kind of packages are put together.
Thank you, Rochelle.
So additional business for this session, or can we go ahead and call it concluded and sensing the body's ready to.
Move to close this hearing.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Very good. Thank you. Sorry to have drawn you for this extra time. The meeting is concluded at 3:45.